All right, Blake. So we've got some of the signings down, and now time to talk about some more Dodgers news that came out really within the last week or so. You and I actually did a Dodger Stadium tour last week, and
Which, can we talk about that for a second?
yeah, okay, yeah,
How awesome that was. So, first off, for those out there that have yet to take the Dodger Stadium tour, make sure you do so. But two, if you're taking the Dodger Stadium tour, do whatever you can to get Josh as your tour guide.
not me.
Now, I was going to say, now, Josh, unfortunately, you don't have enough time in your hands to work the Dodger Stadium tour. So, when you ask for Josh, you're not going to be getting this Josh. You're going to be
No,
getting an even better Josh that gave one hell of a tour. I mean,
it's true.
it was an insane tour. I've done the tour in the past. It was years and years ago. Unfortunately, there was like some high school showcase going on the field, so we couldn't go on the field. We couldn't go into the dugout. But Josh, I'll just say tour guide Josh, he said, you know what, we can't do that. Why don't I add something to the tour? So he took us down pretty much into like the old visitors clubhouse where he said no one ever gets to see, pretty much essentially. They just keep this to have it look cool. We went down like these old hallways that he said essentially only visiting players get to go down. We got to go into the visiting bullpen. That was really pretty cool. We got to tour pretty much everywhere else in the entire stadium. So shout out to tour guide Josh for making all that kind of stuff happen. And Josh, again, we talk about knowing our stuff when it comes to the Dodgers and the history of the Dodgers. He knew pretty much anything and everything there was about the Dodgers. No matter what you asked him, he seemed to have an answer for.
Yeah, he was super informative. He was really fun to talk to, and it was great because, and I told him this afterwards. I feel like I know a lot about the Dodgers, just in general, and then I
Yeah.
feel like you know even more about the Dodgers. But then I feel like he completely blew you out of the water, right? Like it
Yeah.
was it was crazy, and the stuff that he knew, and the cool things we got to see in the ballpark, and of course, some of those things are things that you've seen before. I mean, we went to when you go into the press box for anybody that has been up to that suite level at Dodger Stadium. So behind home plate, you obviously can't see home plate, but you're inside in this room with high ceilings, and basically the suite, like the premium level, is on either side, but you can still access the area that would be basically behind home plate where the entrance to the press box is. Anybody can go in there. So you've probably been in there, looked around, seen a bunch of the cool stuff that they have in there, and then really not noticed what some of it is. And that was cool to kind of have him, showcase that to us. So it was really neat. Going down into the visitors bullpen was awesome. And the sun was setting while we were there, and that's the last place in the ballpark that has to fight with the sun. So that's why it's the visitors bullpen. So it was cool going down and seeing a bunch of stuff like that. I actually got that right. He asked why we thought that,
Yeah.
that the bullpen was right there, and I took a wild guess because I thought, wow, the sun is really bright right now. So there you go. But yeah, it was a great time. So if you get a chance to take the Dodger Stadium tour, um, the the guys from inside the Ravine definitely recommend it. Tell them we
Yeah.
sent you. They won't know
Yeah.
what that means, probably. Josh will,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. When you go to the ticket booth, say, Inside the Ravine sent us, we want Josh. And if they say
exactly.
Josh isn't working today, then you leave and you
Leave.
find out when Josh is working and you
Yes.
make sure that he's your tour guide. But then
And
also
again, not me.
tell him Blake and Josh sent you as well. He'll understand it. But
Yeah. No,
most
no one
likely,
else will have any idea what you're talking about, but
yeah. So
they'll
when you
know.
pull into the Dodger Stadium parking lot, and the guy asks you, what are you here for? Like, don't tell him Blake and Josh sent you, because then he'll probably turn you around. So hold off on that. But once you see Josh, you let him know.
Yeah, there you go. Again, not me. So
Yes.
what? Anyway, the news that we were talking about: Fernando Valenzuela will get his jersey retired by the Dodgers. Something that has been a long time coming, and I know that Dodger fans have a knack for complaining when guys don't get their jerseys retired. I mean, it took Gil Hodges, 50, 60 years to get his jersey retired, which it finally
Yeah.
was last year. But of course, the Dodgers have that Hall of Fame rule. But this year, Fernando Valenzuela, and so that's something that's really cool.
Yeah, so for those quickly that don't know like the rules behind it, the Dodgers do have a rule where they only retire a player's number if they go into the Hall of Fame as a Dodger. So yeah, like last year, Gil Hodges got his number retired because he finally went into the Hall of Fame, having last played for the Dodgers in I think 1962.
Yeah,
So literally 60 years after he suited up for the Dodgers, he finally got his number retired. And, this has been something that fans have been calling for decades because, Josh, ever since Fernando left the Dodgers, I believe like in 1991, no player has even worn number 34 for the Dodgers. So it's not like with Gil Hodges, number 14 was still worn by a bunch of players. The number was essentially already retired. They just couldn't officially do it. And everyone said, you got to make an exception. You got to make an exception. I know the circumstances are different, but the Dodgers had made an exception decades prior. Jim Gilliam, he was a player, he was a coach. Unfortunately, he passed away before the World Series in 1978, so the Dodgers opted to retire his number 19. So clearly, they showed that they can do it, and the fact that it took them, 30 years to get it done, way too long. But the fact that it's finally happening is fantastic news. And they're going to make it like a 3-day weekend when they retire his number. I think he's getting his jersey retired on like a Friday night. Saturday night's like a bobblehead. It's going to be like a ceremony. And then Sunday, I think they're doing like a 1981 World Series kind of tribute, something like that. So long overdue for the Dodgers. It's great that he's finally getting his number retired because he's probably not one of the 5 best players, in Dodgers history. But outside of Jackie Robinson, you can make the case he's the most influential player in especially LA Dodgers history, and probably one of the more influential players in baseball history, over the last 30 or 40 years. Unfortunately, you and I, Josh, weren't around quite yet when Fernando Mania was going down, but based on everything you've heard and everything that's been said, he essentially changed the game in Los Angeles. And because of that, I thought he was more than deserving, and he's a fan favorite as well. So finally, the Dodgers make the right move, and I'm interested to see, Josh, because I don't know if when we were on the tour, if you noticed, by adding Gil Hodges' number this past year, recently they added Vin Scully and Jaime Herrera's microphones. That Ring of Honor, it's getting a little tight. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to have to make the ring smaller, if they're going to have to move them somewhere, but by adding another number, it's going to be pretty crowded out there.
Yeah, it definitely is. But rightfully so, and it's great to see them finally do that for Fernando, who had such an impact here too, on the team, but then also in Los Angeles as a whole. So great to finally see the number go up for him. Obviously, he's still involved with the organization, which is great. So I think that's one way they can get away with also having a full weekend kind of for it, because it's not like
Right.
we got to have this guy back in town and we got to keep him here for 3 days, but he's going to be there anyway. So that's what's really cool, and I like that it took so long, and I feel like the Dodgers know that. So the fact that Fernando is still around the organization, why not go all in and do a full series of Fernando Mania and bring it back? Where last year, I was at the Gil Hodges game, and it's tough because it's been so long with Gil Hodges. He obviously has since passed away, so you've just got people that are still down the family lineage for Gil
Yeah.
Hodges that are out here to kind of represent him and honor him at his jersey retirement for the Dodgers, which was awesome. But the fact that Fernando is still here and still living in LA and still a part of the organization, they kind of get to maximize that opportunity to really, honor him with his jersey retirement. And obviously he had such a big impact in the city of LA. And like you said, he's kind of up there, maybe not with the game as a whole, like Jackie impacted it, but the way that he impacted the Dodgers being kind of that with such a big Latino and Hispanic population in the city, the fact that they kind of had Fernando with the Dodgers, and the fact that they had somebody who could reach out to the community in that way. So I think that's really cool. And finally, you get to see his number retired.
It's pretty crazy how up until last year we had never seen a retirement ceremony by the Dodgers. I think technically I know in 1998 I think that's when they retired Tommy's number, and I think they retired Don Sutton's number, but either at that time you weren't around yet and I was 1.5 or 2 years old, so we don't count those. So the fact that we're getting retirement ceremonies in back-to-back years is pretty cool, and it's probably not going to be too long until we get another one from Clayton Kershaw, probably 5 or 6 years down the road. So got a few more of those coming. My favorite's going to be when they retire Dave Roberts' number one day if he wins another World Series. So all the people that like to clown on Dave Roberts, well, when that number 30's retired, he'll have the last laugh.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we don't have any other jersey retirements to talk about, but two players or two former players are also being inducted into the Dodgers or the Legends of Dodger baseball this season, and it's Manny Mota and Oral Hershiser. They join the five current members: Fernando, Steve Garvey, Don Newcomb, Maury Wills, and Kirk Gibson. So two more people who are involved with the organization already and being honored for their contributions, not just to the game for the Dodgers, but to the organization as a whole.
So I wonder, I was actually just thinking about this. I wonder if they take Fernando out of the Legends of Dodger Baseball, because the whole reason the Legends of Dodger Baseball was created was essentially all the guys that didn't make it into the Hall of Fame that can't have their number retired. They're going to add them to the Legends of Dodger Baseball where they could get their proper recognition. Well, now Fernando, well, he's going to be in both. But like you mentioned, some pretty good names are already, in that list. Oral Hershiser, just getting his numbers up here, Josh. A Cy Young Award winner, 1988 World Series, Silver Slugger, what do we got here? World Series MVP, NLCS MVP, Gold Glove, three-time All-Star. Dude was one of the best pitchers in baseball for a pretty solid stretch. I mean, just this stretch here, Josh, from like 1985 through when the Dodgers won the World Series in 1989. I mean, he was one of the best pitchers. Probably you can make the case the best pitcher in all of baseball. When you think of the 1988 World Series, I know everyone thinks of Kurt Gibson, but Oral Hershiser, excuse me, was a unit. He was a unit during that World Series run.
Yeah, he was. You go back and you watch those clips and then because so on Sportsnet LA they always have those old games running or the specials running, and it is crazy and I did this a lot during COVID when there's not much going on. And before the Dodgers game would start, so the Dodgers are starting at what, 7, and you're like, oh, it's only 2 o'clock. Okay, great. What am I going to do up until the time the Dodgers start when there's nothing else to do? So you just turn on Sportsnet LA and you watch one of the old games, and sure, it's one of the old games from that run, and Oral's pitching, and he's just dominating guys, which is so funny because you look back to the way that the uniforms were when he was around and kind of just the game as a whole, and it's funny to see somebody so tall and lanky as him just throwing gas and just embarrassing dudes. So I've always enjoyed that. And then, of course, you've got Manny Mota, who's a former outfielder with the organization for 12 seasons he was there, and then was a coach for a while, and then now is back kind of, around, the organization a little bit too. So, or Jose is around the organization a little bit. And then Manny has kind of been around as well. He was a coach for a couple of years. So really cool to see him being honored as well, for somebody that had such a big impact for the Dodgers back between 69 and 81 or 82,
Yeah.
or something like that. And he actually came over with Maury Wills too. So in a trade. So I think that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he played 13 years, with the Dodgers, and he's pretty much been involved in the organization ever since. I mean, he still goes to almost every game. I can't remember if he still officially has some sort of title, if he's still technically employed by the Dodgers, but he's been one of those guys that just, hangs around, is still impacting the team on a day-to-day, a year-to-year basis. So again, the numbers, they're not necessarily worthy of, like you said, getting into the Hall of Fame. Even his numbers aren't top 15, maybe top 20 at all in Dodgers history. But when you think of, Dodgers greats, Manny Mota is one that comes to mind. So I'm glad the Dodgers, they discovered this way to, again, if they're not retiring guys' numbers, they're finding ways where they can honor them for a night. They could be in this Legends of Dodger baseball thing, and I think they knocked it out with these two. I'm shocked that maybe they haven't added a third yet, because I know usually every year I think they have 3, so maybe they'll add a third later on, but we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be kind of fun in 20, 30, 40 years from now, when it's oh, Dodgers announce Chris Taylor is added to Legends of Dodger baseball, where it's see, kids, That was my guy back in my day. Hello, fellow youngsters.
Yeah, yeah. He was one of the Spanish broadcasters for the Dodgers too. I think he started doing that back in 2014. Well, with with Sportsnet, because he was doing games on Prime Ticket on the Spanish broadcast. Throwback to the old Prime Ticket days. I've still got that theme song rattling around in my head too. So,
Hey man,
but yeah,
that's when we had Steve Lyons and
yeah,
the my favorite part, and this is like totally just off topic, is on like NBA Twitter and NBA Instagram. Everyone is in love with the Charlotte Hornets broadcaster because this guy goes absolutely insane on every random, just like basic call and play that
layup in the
happens.
second quarter.
And I'm just like, remember when that guy was the Dodgers play-by-play guy like 10, 15 years ago when they were doing road games when Vince stopped doing them and he was like pretty mellow? I remember he had like a few pretty kind of insane calls, but like I guess you're a lot more tame doing baseball, but I'm like, this is the same guy that the Dodgers were kind of grooming to take over the reins, and instead they said, all right, go call Charlotte Hornets basketball. We'll bring in Joe Davis.
Yeah, who is it now? It's Eric Collins.
Yeah.
That's who it is. Yeah, Eric Collins. Yeah, I forgot about that too. I totally forgot about that. That's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, Prime Ticket, man. You know,
Good
sometimes when I'm
times.
doing prep for games, I'll just put on like random music in the background, and sometimes I'll just put on like sports music and just theme songs for different networks, just rolling around and around and around. So sometimes I get lost in that, and then go back and be like, "Oh man, this takes me back to watching a USC San Jose State football game in 2009." Yes. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
Petros on the call.
yeah, Petros Papadakis. Yeah, you guys are pretty good friends, right? No,
Sure.
I just feel like you
Oh
guys
no, we're not. I wish I was. I want to be friends with him.
you guys seem like you would be great friends. So the Dodgers, obviously Fernando, and then Manny Moto and Oral Hershiser. That's always great to see. But